German Shepherd. Was found in an abandoned carousel horse. What baby did. Next left. Everyone in tears. The security guard's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, but what it revealed made him drop his radio. A 5-year-old boy was crawling into a broken carousel horse while his mother screamed for him to stop. What happened in the next 60 seconds would haunt everyone who witnessed it for the rest of their lives. Don't forget to like, share, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Jake had always been different, not in the way that worried doctors or concerned teachers, but in a way that made animals follow him home and birds land on his shoulder. His mother Sarah noticed it first when he was 3, finding him in the backyard having what looked like a full conversation with a stray cat. The cat had been missing for weeks according to the neighbors, but there it sat, purring in Jake's lap, as if telling him all its adventures. "Mommy," Whisker says his paw hurts, Jake had said that day, holding up the cat's left paw. Sarah had humored him, checking the paw only to find an infected thorn embedded deep in the pad. The vet later said it would have killed the cat within days if left untreated. Now, 2 years later, on a humid Tuesday afternoon, Sarah's ancient Honda had chosen the worst possible place to break down. The engine had been making strange noises for weeks, but she'd pushed it, hoping to make it through one more month until her next paycheck. Instead, it died with a violent shudder right outside the chain-link fence of Riverside Amusement Park, abandoned for a decade after a bankruptcy scandal. "Not here," Sarah muttered, yanking her phone from her purse. "Not today." The phone showed no signal, of course. This stretch of road was a dead zone. Everyone knew that. She glanced in the rearview mirror at Jake, who was pressing his nose against the window, staring at the rusted Ferris wheel visible over the fence. "Stay in the car, baby," she said, popping the hood. "Grandpa will be here soon." She'd called her father Max from the last spot with reception, maybe 2 miles back. He'd grumbled about being interrupted during his afternoon coffee, but promised to bring his tools. 20 minutes, he'd said. Maybe 30. Sarah lifted the hood and stared at the engine as if willing it to heal itself. Oil was everywhere. Something had definitely broken, something expensive by the look of it. Her hands shook as she calculated the cost. Rent was due in 3 days. Jake needed new shoes for school. The refrigerator was making that weird humming sound that meant it was about to die. "Mommy?" She turned. The back door was open. Jake's booster seat was empty. "Jake!" Her voice cracked with panic. "Jake, where are you?" A giggle came from the other side of the fence. Through the rusty chains, she could see her son's bright blue shirt disappearing into the park. "Jake! No! Get back here right now." But he was already gone, swallowed by the overgrown grass and twisted metal of the abandoned park. Sarah ran to the fence, finding the gap he'd squeezed through. It was barely wide enough for a child. She'd have to go around to the main gate, another 100 yards down. Her feet pounded on the cracked asphalt as she ran. The main gate was padlocked, but years of weather had bent one corner, creating another gap. She squeezed through, tearing her waitress uniform on a protruding wire, not caring about anything except finding Jake. "Jake! Answer me!" The park was worse than she'd imagined. Weeds grew through every crack. The funhouse had partially collapsed. The roller coaster tracks were brown with rust. And somewhere in this tetanus nightmare was her 5-year-old son. She heard it then. Not Jake's voice, but something else. A sound so faint she almost missed it. Whimpering like an injured animal. "Jake?" She called again, moving toward the sound. The carousel stood in the center of the park, its painted horses frozen in an eternal gallop. Most were missing eyes or legs. The mirrors were shattered. The platform was tilted at an odd angle, as if the earth beneath had shifted. Jake stood beside one of the horses, a white one with a golden saddle that had somehow retained most of its paint. He had his hand pressed against its side, his head tilted in that peculiar way he did when he was listening to something only he could hear. "Jake, thank God." Sarah stumbled forward, her relief so intense her knees nearly buckled. "You scared me to death. We need to leave. Now." "She's in here, Mommy." Jake didn't look at her. His voice was strange, distant. "She's hurt real bad." "Who's in where?" "Jake, there's nobody here. This place has been closed for..." The whimper came again, definitely from inside the carousel horse. Sarah's blood turned cold. The horses were supposed to be solid fiberglass. But looking closer, she saw this one was different. There was a seam along its belly, barely visible under years of dirt. "She can't get out," Jake said, his small fingers tracing the seam. "She went in to have her babies where it was safe, but now she's stuck." "Babies?" Sarah's mind raced. A raccoon, maybe? A cat? "Jake, step back. It might be dangerous." But Jake was already pulling at the seam with his tiny fingers. "Help me, Mommy. Please. She's crying." Sarah heard it clearly now. Not just whimpering, but labored breathing, desperate and weak. Against every maternal instinct screaming at her to grab Jake and run, she knelt beside him. The seam was actually a panel, held in place by ancient screws. Someone had modified this horse years ago, hollowing it out for some reason. "We need tools," she said. "Grandpa will have—" A sound behind them made them both freeze. Footsteps on gravel, heavy ones. Sarah spun around, pushing Jake behind her. A man emerged from behind the funhouse, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a stained security uniform. His face was weathered, suspicious. "Parks closed," he said, his hand moving to the baton on his belt. "You're trespassing." "My car broke down," Sarah said quickly. "My son ran in here. We're leaving right now." The guard's eyes narrowed. "That your Honda out there? Been there an hour by my count?" An hour? That wasn't possible. They'd only been there 20 minutes at most. But Sarah wasn't about to argue with an armed guard in an abandoned park. "We're sorry. We'll go." She grabbed Jake's hand, but he pulled away. "No! Mommy, we can't leave her." The whimpering from inside the horse grew louder, more desperate. The guard's expression changed. He stepped closer, listening. "What the hell?" He pulled out his flashlight, shining it on the Carousel horse. The beam caught something dark seeping from the seam. Blood. Fresh blood. Jesus Christ. The guard's entire demeanor shifted. "How long has that been making noise?" "We just heard it," Sarah said. "Please, we think there's an animal trapped inside." The guard was already pulling out a multi-tool from his belt. "Stand back, kid." But his voice was gentler now. He worked on the screws with practiced efficiency. "Found cats in here before. Dogs, too. People dump them when they can't afford them anymore, but never seen one get inside the horses." The panel came loose with a grinding sound. The guard pulled it away, and his flashlight beam illuminated the inside of the horse. Sarah gasped. Jake made a sound like a wounded animal himself. Inside was a German shepherd, but barely recognizable as one. Her ribs showed through patchy, scarred fur. A chain collar had embedded itself so deeply into her neck that flesh had grown over it. One eye was swollen shut, infected. Old wounds, some healed, some still raw, covered her body in a horrific pattern that spoke of systematic abuse. But that wasn't what made Sarah's knees buckle. Pressed against the dog's belly were puppies, newborn, maybe 2 or 3 days old at most, 3 of them, so small they fit in the palm of a hand, their eyes still sealed shut. They were barely moving. "She crawled in here to give birth," the guard whispered, his tough exterior crumbling. "But the panel must have shifted. She couldn't get back out." The mother dog's one good eye focused on Jake. Her tail, what was left of it, gave the faintest thump. A plea. A surrender. A final desperate hope. Jake dropped to his knees. "It's okay now," he whispered, reaching his small hand toward her. "We're going to help you." Sarah grabbed his wrist. "Don't touch her?" She might bite. But the dog just closed her eye, a single tear rolling down her scarred muzzle. Jake's hand found her head, stroking gently between her ears. The dog let out a shuddering sigh. "She says thank you," Jake said, his own tears falling freely. "She says she tried so hard to keep them alive." The guard cleared his throat roughly. "We need to get her out. Now. Those pups don't have long in this heat." He looked at Sarah. "You got a vehicle that runs?" "My father's coming. He should be here any minute." As if summoned, they heard a truck engine approaching. Max's old Ford came into view through the fence, pulling up behind Sarah's Honda. "That's him," Sarah said. The guard nodded. "I'll go get him. You two stay with the dog. Talk to her. Keep her calm." He jogged toward the gate, moving faster than his bulk suggested possible. Sarah knelt beside Jake, who hadn't stopped petting the dog. The animal's breathing was shallow, labored. How long had she been trapped? Days? A week? "The puppies aren't moving much," Sarah said, fear creeping into her voice. Jake moved his hand to the dog's belly, his touch impossibly gentle. They're alive, but they're so hungry. She hasn't been able to feed them right because she's too sick. How do you know that, baby? Jake looked at her with those serious blue eyes that sometimes seem decades older than 5. She tells me, not with words, with feelings, with pictures in my head. Before Sarah could respond, Max arrived with the guard, carrying a toolbox and a dirty blanket from his truck. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, Max breathed when he saw the dog. His weathered face, usually set in permanent disapproval, softened with shock. What kind of monster does this to an animal? Fighting rings, the guard said grimly. See it all the time in the city. This one's a bait dog. See those scars? They use them to train the fighters. When they're too damaged to be useful, they dump them. Max was already examining the carousel horse with his mechanic's eye. We can't pull her through that opening, too narrow. Need to remove the whole side panel. He pulled out a crowbar. This is going to be loud. She might panic. She won't, Jake said with absolute certainty. I'll tell her what's happening. The adults exchanged glances but didn't argue. There was something about the boy's confidence, the way the dog's eye followed his every movement, that made questioning him seem foolish. Max worked quickly, years of taking apart engines, making his movements efficient. The side panel groaned, resisted, then suddenly gave way with a crack that echoed through the empty park. The dog was fully visible now, and somehow she looked even worse in the full light. Every rib was visible. Open sores wept on her haunches. Her back legs were twisted at an odd angle, as if they'd been broken and healed wrong. We need to move her carefully, Max said. Sarah, get the blanket under her. Guard. Tom, the guard supplied. Tom Bradley. Tom, you take her head. I'll take her hindquarters. Kid, you keep those puppies in place. Jake nodded solemnly, his small hands cupping the tiny bodies against their mother's belly. On 3, Max said. 1, 2, they lifted. The dog let out a single heartbreaking yelp, then went silent. For a terrifying moment, Sarah thought she'd died, but her chest still rose and fell, barely. They carried her to Max's truck, laying her on an old furniture pad in the bed. The puppies mewled weakly as they were moved, their cries so faint they sounded like distant birds. There's an emergency vet on Riverside, Tom said. Dr. Chen. She's good. Takes cases like this sometimes. We can't afford... Sarah started. We'll figure it out. Max cut her off, his tone brooking no argument. You don't leave something to suffer because of money. Jake climbed into the truck bed without asking permission, positioning himself by the dog's head. I'm staying with her. Jake, you need to ride in the cab. It's not safe. She's scared, Jake interrupted, his voice carrying an authority that seemed impossible in someone so young. She thinks we're taking her back to the bad people. I need to tell her we're not. The dog's good eye opened, fixed on Jake. Her tail moved again, just barely. Let him ride back here, Tom said quietly. I'll follow in my car, make sure they're safe. Speed limit the whole way. Sarah wanted to argue, every protective instinct screaming against letting her 5-year-old ride in an open truck bed with a traumatized fighting dog. But something in Jake's face, the absolute certainty there, made her nod. Max drove slowly, carefully, while Sarah gripped the dashboard and watched through the rear window. Jake sat cross-legged, the dog's massive head in his tiny lap, his mouth moving constantly as he talked to her. One hand stroked her ear, while the other kept the puppies pressed against her belly. The drive took 15 minutes. It felt like hours. Dr. Emily Chen's clinic was small, squeezed between a liquor store and a check-cashing place. The neon emergency sign flickered weakly. But the moment Tom Bradley ran inside, Dr. Chen appeared, all business despite the late hour. She was younger than Sarah expected, maybe 35, with kind eyes behind thick glasses. She took one look at the dog, and her expression hardened. Fighting ring? She asked Tom. Bait dog. Found her in the old amusement park. She'd crawled into a carousel horse to give birth. Dr. Chen was already pulling on gloves. How old are the puppies? Maybe 3 days, Jake said. She says she had them Sunday night. The vet paused, looking at the boy. She told you that? Jake nodded matter-of-factly. She remembers because there were fireworks. They scared her, but she couldn't run because the babies were coming. Sarah started to apologize for her son's imagination, but Dr. Chen held up a hand. Sunday was the 4th of July. There were fireworks all over the city. She studied Jake with an unreadable expression. "What else does she tell you?" "Her name is Luna," Jake said, though the scarred collar showed no tags. "The lady who loved her called her that because she found her during a full moon. But the bad men just called her bait." Dr. Chen's expression darkened further. "Let's get her inside." "Now?" They transferred Luna to a gurney, the dog barely conscious now. The puppies were separated, placed in a small incubator that Dr. Chen wheeled out from a back room. Jake protested, but the vet was firm. "They need warmth and oxygen. I promise they'll be right next to their mother." The examination room was small but clean. Dr. Chen worked with practiced efficiency, hooking Luna up to an IV, taking blood, examining wounds. Her face grew progressively grimmer. "She's septic," she said finally. "Multiple infections, severe malnutrition, internal injuries that are at least a week old, broken ribs that haven't been set. And this collar..." She shook her head. "It's been on so long the skin has grown over it. I'll need to surgically remove it." "Will she survive?" Sarah asked, her arm around Jake, who had gone very still. "I don't know. The next 12 hours will tell us. If she makes it through the night, she has a chance. But what?" "The puppies. She's too weak to nurse them properly. They're already showing signs of severe malnutrition. We'll need to bottle feed them every 2 hours, and even then." She didn't finish. "How much?" Sarah asked, the words like glass in her throat. "For all of it?" Dr. Chen looked at the dog, at Jake's tear-streaked face, at Sarah's worn waitress uniform. "Let's focus on keeping them alive first. We'll figure out payment later." "I have $47, Jake said suddenly, his voice small but determined. "In my piggy bank. It's for my birthday, but Luna needs it more." Dr. Chen knelt down to Jake's level. "That's very generous, but right now, what Luna needs most is for you to keep talking to her. Can you do that while I work on her?" Jake nodded, wiping his nose with his sleeve. "She's scared of the needle smells. They remind her of the bad place. Then tell her these are good needles, foul medicine needles. They'll make the hurt go away." As Dr. Chen prepared for surgery, she asked Tom, "The fighting ring. Do you know who's running it?" Tom's face darkened. "Got my suspicions. Victor Reeves. Been trying to nail him for years, but he's smart. Never leaves evidence." "This dog is evidence, Doctor," Chen said, gesturing to Luna's wounds. "These injuries, the pattern of them, the embedded collar with a specific brand. I've seen it before. Reeves uses a particular type of chain, thinks it makes the dogs meaner. Would you testify to that?" "In a heartbeat." While the adults talked, Jake had moved to Luna's head, his small hands gentle on her ears. The dog's good eye was fixed on him, and despite the pain she must have been in, her tail gave occasional weak thumps. "You're going to be okay," Jake whispered. "The doctor is nice. She smells like cats and coffee and those minty things, not like cigarettes and beer and mean." Dr. Chen paused in her preparations. "She's responding to him." Her heart rate actually stabilized when he started talking. "He's always been like this with animals," Sarah said, not sure whether to be proud or worried. "Even as a baby." "It's a gift, by doctor," Chen said simply. "Some people have it. The animals know somehow. They trust them instinctively." She administered the anesthetic, and Luna's eyes slowly closed. Jake didn't move, kept talking, his voice a steady stream of reassurance. "The puppies are warm now. They're in a special bed with soft blankets. When you wake up, the collar will be gone. You'll be able to breathe better, and we won't let anyone hurt you again. I promise." The surgery took 2 hours. Sarah and Max sat in the waiting room, the plastic chairs uncomfortable, the fluorescent lights harsh. Tom had left to file a report, but promised to return. $47, Max said suddenly. "What?" "The kid saved $47. Takes after his mother." A ghost of a smile crossed his weathered face. "You used to bring home every stray in the neighborhood. Drove your mother crazy." Sarah felt tears threaten. Her mother had been gone 3 years now, cancer taking her just months after Sarah's husband had left, unable to handle the responsibility of a child with problems, as he'd called Jake's sensitivity. "I can't afford this, Dad." We'll figure it out. Always do. My rent is due. Jake needs clothes for school. I can barely feed us as it is. Max was quiet for a moment. Your mother left some money, not much, but some. Been saving it for an emergency. Dad, no. That's your retirement. What's the point of retirement if my grandson loses the thing that makes him special? Max's voice was gruff. That boy has something. I don't understand it, but I see it. The way that dog looked at him. Sarah, that was trust. Pure trust. From an animal that has every reason never to trust a human again. Before Sarah could respond, Jake appeared in the doorway, his face pale but hopeful. She made it through surgery. Dr. Chen says she's stable. They followed him back to the recovery room. Luna lay on a heated pad, her breathing deep and even. The horrible collar was gone, replaced by clean white bandages. An IV dripped steadily into her leg. She looked peaceful for the first time. The puppies were in an incubator nearby, 3 tiny bodies no bigger than hamsters. They moved weakly, making soft mewing sounds. They need names, Jake said. Luna wants them to have good names, not mean ones. How about you choose, Dr. Chen suggested, checking Luna's vitals. Jake studied the puppies seriously. The boy is brave because he protected his sisters, even though he's the smallest. The bigger girl is Hope, because Luna never gave up hope that someone would find them. And the little girl is Miracle because it's a miracle they're alive. Dr. Chen smiled. Perfect names. Her expression grew serious. But I need to be honest with you. The next few days are critical. Luna is fighting multiple infections. The puppies are severely undernourished. They'll need round-the-clock care. I'll do it, Jake said immediately. Baby, you have school, Sarah started. Summer break starts tomorrow, Jake reminded her. Please, Mommy. Luna needs me. They all need me. Dr. Chen looked between them. I could use the help, actually. My assistant is on vacation. If Jake could spend days here, helping with feeding and comfort care, it would make a difference. Animals often heal better with consistent companionship. I can't pay for room and board for a veterinary assistant, Dr. Chen said firmly. That's different from payment. Jake works, the dogs get care. Fair trade. Sarah knew charity when she heard it, but the hope in Jake's eyes made her swallow her pride. Okay, but I drop him off and pick him up. And any sign of danger? Luna's not dangerous, Jake interrupted. She's just hurt. There's a difference. That night, Sarah barely slept. She kept thinking about the dog, the puppies, the bill that would inevitably come. But mostly she thought about Jake, about the way he'd known exactly what Luna needed, about the absolute certainty in his voice when he'd made promises to a dying dog. The next morning, she dropped Jake off at the clinic at 7. Dr. Chen was already there, looking tired but smiling. Luna made it through the night. That's a very good sign. Jake ran to Luna's kennel. The dog's good eye opened, tracking him. Her tail moved, stronger than yesterday. See? Jake said, gently touching her muzzle through the kennel bars. I told you we'd come back. Sarah watched her son settle cross-legged on the floor, a picture book in his hands. This is about a bunny who gets lost, he told Luna. But he finds his way home, just like you're going to. As Sarah left for her shift at the diner, she heard Jake's voice, steady and sure, reading to a scarred dog who had every reason to give up, but hadn't. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Heard you found something that belongs to me. We should talk. VR Sarah's blood went cold. VR Victor Reeves. She deleted the message, but her hands shook as she started the car. How had he gotten her number? How did he know? At work, she couldn't focus. Every time the door opened, she expected to see some thug demanding Luna back. Her manager noticed her distraction. You okay, honey? Martha asked. The older woman had been kind to Sarah since she'd started at the diner 2 years ago. Just worried about Jake. That special boy of yours? What's wrong? Sarah found herself telling Martha everything. The abandoned park, Luna, the puppies, the vet bill she couldn't pay, and now the text. Martha's expression hardened. Victor Reeves is bad news. Real bad. You need to tell the police about that text. What if he comes after Jake? Men like Reeves are cowards. They hurt animals because animals can't report them, but they're scared of real consequences. Martha pulled out her phone. My nephew is a cop. Let me call him. An hour later, Officer Tom Bradley walked into the diner. Not the security guard from the park, but his brother, as it turned out. "My brother told me about the dog," he said, sitting at the counter. "And now Reeves is making contact?" Sarah showed him the text, which she'd screenshotted before deleting. Tom's face was grim. "This is witness intimidation. We can use this." He looked at Sarah seriously. "But I need you to understand, Reeves has been untouchable for years. He's smart, has good lawyers, always stays just inside the law. This dog might be our chance to finally get him. I don't want Jake involved in some court case. He might not have a choice. If that dog can be definitively linked to Reeves's operation." Sarah's phone buzzed again, another unknown number. "Don't delete it," Tom said quickly. "Let me see." The message was a photo. Luna, from before, healthy and beautiful, sitting next to an elderly woman in a garden. The caption read, "She was stolen. I want her back." "That's not Reeves," Tom said, frowning. "This is something else." A third message appeared. "My name is Margaret Liu. That's my dog, Luna. She was stolen 8 months ago. Please, I just want her back." Sarah's heart sank. Of course, Luna had an owner, someone who loved her, who'd been looking for her. "I have to call her," Sarah said. "Wait," Tom advised. "Let me run this number first. Make sure it's legitimate." But Sarah was already dialing. A woman answered on the first ring, her voice elderly and desperate. "You have Luna? Is she okay? Is she alive?" She's alive," Sarah said carefully, "but she's very sick. She was used in dogfighting." The woman on the other end let out a sound like a wounded animal. "My Luna? Fighting? No, she's the gentlest. Who would do such a thing? Ma'am, where are you? Can you come to the clinic? I'm in Seattle. I moved there after Luna was stolen. I couldn't stay in that house without her. But I'll drive down immediately, tonight. Please don't let her die before I get there." Sarah gave her the clinic's address, her heart heavy. Jake would be devastated. He'd already bonded so deeply with Luna. When she picked Jake up that evening, she tried to prepare him. "Someone called today. Luna's original owner, she's coming to get her." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Mrs. Liu is coming?" Sarah nearly drove off the road. "How did you know her name?" "Luna told me. She misses her, but she's also scared Mrs. Liu will be sad when she sees how hurt she is." "Jake, baby, you know Luna can't actually—" "She can, Mommy. Why won't anyone believe me?" His voice was frustrated now, 5 years old again. "Luna shows me pictures. Mrs. Liu in a yellow kitchen, making soup, a big garden with tomatoes, a husband who died last Christmas, and that's when the sadness started." Sarah pulled into their apartment complex, her mind reeling. There was no way Jake could know these things. Was there? That night, while Jake slept, Sarah Googled Margaret Liu, found an obituary for Robert Liu, died December 23rd of the previous year. The photo showed an elderly Asian couple in what was clearly a yellow kitchen, smiling at the camera. Her hands shook as she closed the laptop. The next morning, Dr. Chen called early. "We have a problem. Luna's developed pneumonia. She's on oxygen, but it's touch and go." Sarah woke Jake gently. "Luna's very sick. We need to go to the clinic." Jake was out of bed instantly, still in his dinosaur pajamas. "She's scared she won't see Mrs. Liu again." They drove in silence, Jake pressing his face against the window. "At the clinic, doctor." Chen met them at the door, her face grave. "She's fighting, but the infection is aggressive. The stress of everything, the malnutrition, the injuries, her body just doesn't have much left to fight with." Jake ran to Luna's kennel. The dog was on oxygen, her breathing labored and wet. Her eye was closed. "Luna," Jake whispered. "Luna, please. You have to keep fighting. Mrs. Liu is coming. She's driving all night to see you." The dog's eye opened slightly, focusing on Jake. "And your puppies need you. Brave and hope and miracle. They need their mama." Luna's tail moved, just barely. Dr. Chen watched, amazed. Her heart rate just improved. "How does he do that?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "I really don't know." Jake spent the entire day by Luna's kennel, talking constantly. He told her stories, sang songs he'd learned in preschool, described the puppies who were getting stronger with bottle feeding. "Brave opened his eyes today," he told Luna. "They're brown like yours. And Hope is already trying to walk, even though she's too little. Miracle is still small, but she's fighting, just like you taught them. By afternoon, Luna's breathing had improved slightly. Not much, but enough that, doctors. Chen reduced the oxygen flow. It's still critical, she warned, but she's stable for now. At 6 o'clock, a car pulled up outside. An elderly Asian woman got out, moving stiffly after the long drive. Margaret Liu looked exactly like the photo, down to the yellow cardigan she wore. Where is she? Where's my Luna? Jake met her at the door. She's very sick, Mrs. Liu, but she's been waiting for you. Margaret looked at the small boy, something passing across her face. You're the one who found her? Jake nodded. In the carousel horse. She was protecting her babies. Babies? Margaret's hand went to her heart. Luna had puppies? 3. Come see. He led her first to the incubator, where the puppies were squirming, much more active now after 2 days of regular feeding. Oh my, Margaret breathed. They're beautiful. This is Brave, Hope, and Miracle. Jake introduced them solemnly. Luna loves them very much. Can I see her now? Jake led her to Luna's kennel. Margaret gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The dog she'd known was barely recognizable under the bandages and scars. My poor baby, she whispered. My poor, poor baby. What did they do to you? Luna's eye opened at the sound of her voice. Her tail moved, stronger than it had all day. She's happy you're here, Jake said. But she's sorry she looks different now. Margaret was crying. Openly, can I touch her? Dr. Chen nodded. Gently. Margaret reached through the kennel bars, her weathered hand finding Luna's head. It's okay, my love. You're still my beautiful girl. Always. Luna let out a sigh that seemed to come from her soul. She was my husband's dog first, Margaret said, not taking her eyes off Luna. He found her as a puppy, abandoned in a parking lot during a full moon. Said it was fate when he died. Her voice broke. Luna was all I had left of him. Then someone broke into my yard and took her. The police said she was probably sold to fighters because of her breed and size. Victor Reeves, Tom Bradley said from the doorway. He'd arrived to check on the case. We're building evidence against him. Margaret's expression hardened. I want him to pay for this. He will, Tom assured her. Your testimony, the vet records, the DNA evidence from the collar, we're getting closer. Margaret turned to Jake. Young man, I owe you everything. You saved her life. Jake shook his head. She saved herself. She stayed alive for her puppies. And for you. Margaret studied him for a long moment. You're special, aren't you? You understand them. Nobody believes me, Jake said quietly. I do. Margaret took his hand. My husband had the same gift. Animals knew they could trust him. It's why Luna loved him so much. She looked at Sarah. Your son has something precious. Don't let the world tell him it's not real. That night, Margaret stayed at the clinic, sleeping in a chair next to Luna's kennel. Jake refused to leave too, curling up on a mat doctor. Chen provided. Sarah stayed as well, unable to leave her son. Around midnight, Luna's breathing worsened again. The pneumonia was winning. We're losing her, doctor, Chen said, preparing more medications. Jake sat up instantly. No, she's not ready. She hasn't said goodbye to her puppies. Jake, she's too weak to move. Then bring them to her. Dr. Chen hesitated, then carefully brought the puppies from the incubator. They were so small, their eyes barely open, making tiny mewing sounds. Jake placed them against Luna's side, their tiny bodies fitting in the curve of her belly. Luna's eye opened, focusing on them with what seemed like enormous effort. Tell them you love them, Jake whispered to Luna. Tell them to be brave and strong. Luna's tongue came out, slowly, painfully, and touched each puppy. Brave, then Hope, then Little Miracle. Each puppy responded, their tiny tails wagging, their mewing becoming more insistent. And then something extraordinary happened. Luna's breathing deepened. Her heart rate, which had been erratic, steadied. The oxygen monitor showed improvement. That's impossible, doctor, Chen breathed. Her vitals are stabilizing. She won't leave them, Jake said simply. Not now that she's seen they're okay. Margaret was crying again, but smiling through her tears. That's my Luna. Always a fighter. The rest of the night passed slowly. Luna's condition remained stable, though still critical. The puppies were returned to the incubator, but not before each had nursed briefly, Luna somehow finding the strength to feed them despite everything. As dawn broke through the clinic windows, Dr. Chen checked Luna's vitals again. The pneumonia is responding to treatment. She's not out of the woods, but I think she's going to make it. Jake, who'd been dozing against Margaret's shoulder, smiled sleepily. I knew she would. She's too stubborn to give up. Like someone else I know, Sarah said, ruffling her son's hair. Margaret looked between them. I need to ask you something important. Sarah tensed, knowing what was coming. Margaret would take Luna back to Seattle. Jake would be heartbroken. But Margaret surprised her. I'm 73 years old. I live alone in a small apartment. I can barely walk some days because of my arthritis. She looked at Luna, then at Jake. I love Luna more than anything, but I can't give her what she needs now. The medical care, the rehabilitation, the puppies. What are you saying? Sarah asked. I'm saying that maybe Luna found exactly where she needs to be. Margaret took Jake's hand. Would you be willing to share her with an old woman? Let me visit, send me pictures, but let her stay with you. Jake's eyes went wide. Really? She could stay? If your mother agrees. And if you promise to love her and those puppies with all your heart. I promise, Jake said solemnly, forever and ever. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Liu, we can't accept. Yes, you can. Margaret's voice was firm. My husband would have wanted this. Luna chose you through Jake. Who am I to argue with that? Tom Bradley cleared his throat. I hate to interrupt, but we have another problem. My sources say Reeves knows Luna is here. He's planning something. The warmth of the moment shattered. Sarah pulled Jake closer. What kind of something? I don't know yet, but we're posting an officer outside, and I think, he hesitated. I think we need to move faster on the case. Use Luna as bait in a controlled situation. Absolutely not, Sarah said immediately. Not Luna herself, Tom clarified quickly. Just the information about her. Let Reeves think he has an opportunity. When he makes his move, we arrest him. It's too dangerous, Margaret said. Jake stood up, his small face serious. Luna says she wants to help. She doesn't want any other dogs to go through what she did. Everyone stared at him. Jake, honey, this is serious, Sarah started. So am I. Jake's voice carried that strange authority again. Luna knows the bad man's smell. She knows his voice. She can identify him. Tom knelt down to Jake's level. Are you saying Luna could identify Reeves in a lineup? Jake nodded. She remembers everything. The cigarette smell, the cologne he wears, the way his shoes sound. She remembers. It was crazy, using a dog's reaction as evidence. But Tom had seen Stranger. Things work in court. Let me make some calls, he said. The next few days passed in a blur of recovery and preparation. Luna grew stronger, able to stand and take a few steps. The puppies thrived, their eyes fully open, beginning to explore their small world. Jake spent every moment at the clinic, talking to Luna, helping with the puppies, somehow knowing exactly what each animal needed. Dr. Chen started calling him her assistant, without any irony. Margaret visited daily, bringing homemade soup for everyone, and sitting with Luna, telling her stories about Robert, about their life together. But underneath the healing, tension grew. Tom's sources reported Reeves was getting desperate. The fighting ring was falling apart without Luna and the promised puppies. Big money was at stake. Then, 5 days after Luna's rescue, everything came to a head. Sarah was at work when her phone rang. Dr. Chen panicked. Someone tried to break into the clinic. The officer stopped them, but Jake ran out during the commotion. He's gone. Sarah's world tilted. What do you mean gone? He said Luna told him something, about other dogs. He ran toward the old industrial district before anyone could stop him. Sarah was already running to her car, Martha shouting after her. She called Tom Bradley as she drove. We're looking for him, Tom assured her. Every officer in the area. But Sarah knew, with a certainty that chilled her bones, that Jake had gone to find Reeves. Somehow, someway, her 5-year-old son had decided to end this himself. The industrial district was a maze of abandoned warehouses and rusted factories. Sarah drove frantically, searching, calling Jake's name. Then she saw it. A small figure in a dinosaur t-shirt, standing outside a warehouse with a red door. The red door Jake had described days ago, though she'd dismissed it as imagination. She slammed on the brakes, running toward him. "Jake! Get away from there!" But Jake wasn't alone. A man stood in the doorway, tall and thin, wearing expensive shoes that clicked on the concrete. Victor Reeves. "Well," Reeves said, his voice oily, "the boy who stole my dog." "She was never yours," Jake said, his voice steady despite his size. "You hurt her. You made her fight. You're a bad man." Reeves laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You cost me a lot of money, kid." "Good." Jake stood his ground. "And now all the other dogs are going to be free too." "What other dogs?" Jake pointed behind Reeves, into the warehouse. "The ones in there. The ones you're getting ready for tomorrow's fight." Reeves's face went pale. "How could you possibly—" "Luna told me. She remembers everything. The smells, the sounds, the other dogs crying." Jake's voice rose. "And she told the police too. They're coming." As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance. Reeves's head snapped toward the sound, then back to Jake. "You little—" He stepped toward Jake, his hand raising, and Sarah's world went red. She threw herself between them, shoving Reeves back with strength born of maternal rage. "Touch my son, and I'll kill you myself!" Reeves stumbled, his expensive shoes slipping on oil-stained concrete. He fell hard, his head hitting the ground with a crack. Police cars screeched into the lot, officers pouring out. Tom Bradley was first, his weapon drawn. "Nobody move!" But Reeves wasn't moving. He was unconscious, blood pooling under his head. And from inside the warehouse came the sound of dozens of dogs, barking, crying, calling for help. The warehouse door stood open like a mouthful of broken teeth, and from inside came sounds that would haunt Sarah's dreams for months. Not just barking, but whimpering, crying, the desperate sounds of animals that had given up hope. Tom Bradley was already on his radio, calling for animal control, ambulances, backup, everyone. "Jake, get in the car," Sarah ordered, her voice shaking as badly as her hands. But her son stood frozen, staring at the warehouse with tears streaming down his face. "There's so many," he whispered. Luna was right, there's so many. Paramedics arrived, loading the unconscious Reeves onto a stretcher. One of them checked him over, looking grim. "Skull fracture. He's stable but needs surgery." Sarah felt no sympathy. Zero. The man had been about to hit her 5-year-old son. Tom Bradley approached them, his expression a mixture of relief and concern. "You both need to leave. This is a crime scene now." "The dogs," Jake started. "We'll get them all out. I promise." Tom's voice softened. "You did good, kid. Real good. But now let the adults handle it." Sarah drove Jake back to the clinic in silence, her hands still shaking on the wheel. How had he known? How had he found that warehouse? The questions swirled, but she was too exhausted, too overwhelmed to voice them. At the clinic, Margaret and Dr. Chen were waiting, both frantic with worry. Luna was standing for the first time, supported by a special harness, her good eye fixed on the door. The moment Jake walked in, Luna let out a sound Sarah had never heard from a dog before. Not quite a bark, not quite a howl, but something deep and primal and relieved. Jake ran to her, burying his face in her scarred neck. "I found them," he told her. "I found all your friends. They're going to be okay now." Luna's tail wagged so hard her whole body shook, and for the first time since they'd found her, her tongue lolled out in something like a smile. "How?" Dr. Chen asked, looking at Sarah. "How did he know where to go?" Sarah shook her head. "I don't know. He just knew." Margaret wasn't surprised. Robert used to do the same thing. He'd suddenly know where an injured animal was, like they were calling to him. She touched Jake's shoulder gently. "It's a gift. A real one." Over the next several hours, the scope of what they had uncovered became clear. 37 dogs were rescued from the warehouse. Fighting dogs, bait dogs, puppies being trained for the ring. Some were beyond help, too damaged physically and mentally to save. But many could be rehabilitated, Doctor. Chen confirmed, though it would take time and resources. The story exploded across local news. 5-year-old boy leads police to dog fighting ring. Jake's picture was everywhere, though Sarah had tried to shield him from the media attention. But what really went viral was the security footage Tom Bradley had pulled from a nearby building. It showed Jake walking directly to the warehouse with no hesitation, as if following a map only he could see. It showed him standing up to Reeves, this tiny boy facing down a dangerous criminal without flinching. And it showed Sarah, fierce as any lioness, protecting her child. Donations poured in, not just for Luna and her puppies, but for all the rescued dogs. A GoFundMe set up by Martha at the diner raised $200,000 in 3 days. Suddenly, there was money for medical care, rehabilitation, everything. But with the attention came problems. "There's someone here to see you, doctor," Chen said 3 days after the warehouse raid. Her expression was carefully neutral. "Says he's Jake's father." Sarah's blood went ice cold. David. He'd left when Jake was 2, unable to handle what he called Jake's weirdness with animals. Signed away his rights, paid minimal child support when he remembered, disappeared into his new life with his new normal family. He stood in the waiting room, looking older, softer around the middle, wearing an expensive suit that screamed, "Lawyer." "Sarah?" His smile was the same one that had charmed her 8 years ago, fake as plastic. "And Jake! Look how big you've gotten." Jake pressed against Sarah's leg, saying nothing. Luna, still weak but mobile now, moved to stand between them and David, her body language protective. "What do you want?" Sarah asked, not bothering with pleasantries. "I saw the news." "My son, a hero. I'm so proud." David stepped forward, but Luna's low growl stopped him. "I thought we should talk about Jake's future." "You signed away any say in Jake's future." "About that." David pulled out papers. "My lawyer says those documents might not be entirely binding, especially now that Jake clearly has some kind of valuable ability." There it was. The real reason. Jake was famous now, special in a way that could be monetized, and suddenly David wanted back in. "Get out," Sarah said quietly. "Now, let's be reasonable. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement that benefits everyone. The media rights alone." "Get out!" Sarah's shout made everyone in the clinic freeze. "You walked away when he needed you. You called him broken. And now you want to make money off him?" Luna's growl grew louder, and now the 3 puppies, growing stronger every day, joined in with their tiny puppy growls from their pen. David's face flushed. "I'll sue for custody." "My lawyer says." "Your lawyer can go to hell." Margaret Liu stepped out from the examination room, her small frame radiating authority. "I've just gotten off the phone with my nephew. He's a partner at Liu, Chen, and Associates, best family law firm in the state. They'll be representing Sarah pro bono." David's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Furthermore," Margaret continued, "I've been recording this entire conversation. Judges tend to frown on parents who abandon their children, then return only when there's money involved." David looked at Jake one more time. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Jake said, speaking for the first time. His voice was quiet but firm. "You don't love me. You never did. Luna loves me more in 1 day than you did in 2 years." The words hung in the air like a judgment. David left without another word, the door slamming behind him. Sarah collapsed into a chair, shaking. Jake climbed into her lap, and Luna painfully lowered herself to lean against Sarah's legs. "We're a family," Jake said simply. "You, me, Grandpa, Luna, and the puppies. We don't need him." "No," Sarah agreed, holding him tight. "We don't." But the challenges weren't over. A week later, with Luna growing stronger and the puppies becoming proper little dogs, racing around the clinic and charming everyone, Tom Bradley brought disturbing news. "Reeves is awake, and his lawyer is claiming the head injury caused permanent damage. They're saying you assaulted him, Sarah." "He was going to hit Jake." "I know, we all know, but his lawyer is good, very good, and Reeves has connections, people who owe him favors, judges, prosecutors." Tom looked grim. "This could get ugly. What about the dog fighting charges?" "Oh, those will stick." "The evidence is overwhelming, but he might take you down with him out of spite." Sarah felt the walls closing in. Just when things were getting better, when they finally had hope. "There's something else," Jake said suddenly. He'd been quiet, playing with the puppies, but now he looked up with that too-old expression. Luna remembers where Reeves keeps his books. The real ones, with all the names of people who paid him. Tom went very still. What kind of names? Jake closed his eyes, his hand on Luna's head. A judge named Harrison. A police captain named Murphy. A city councilman named Dale. They all bet on the fights. They all knew. Jesus Christ, Tom breathed. If that's true... Jake, are you absolutely sure? Jake nodded. Luna went with Reeves once to his office. He was bragging to someone about how he owned the city. The books are in a safe behind a painting of dogs playing poker. The combination is his birthday backwards. Tom stared at the boy. How could Luna possibly know a safe combination? She watched him open it. She's very smart. She remembers the pattern his fingers made. It was insane. Impossible. But Tom had seen enough impossible things from Jake to believe it might be true. I need to make some calls, he said, already pulling out his phone. Federal calls. If Reeves has been bribing officials, that's FBI territory. 2 days later, FBI agents raided Reeves's home and office. They found the safe exactly where Jake had described it, behind the tacky poker dogs painting, and inside were ledgers detailing years of bribes, fight fixing, and money laundering. Half the city's power structure was implicated. Reeves's lawyer dropped the assault charges so fast it made headlines. Suddenly, Reeves was looking at federal racketeering charges on top of animal cruelty. He'd die in prison. How? Dr. Chen asked Jake one evening as she watched him feed the puppies. They were big enough now to eat solid food, tumbling over each other to get to the bowls. How do you really do it? Jake looked up at her with those serious blue eyes. I don't know. Listen, animals are always talking. Most people just forgot how to hear them. Could you teach others? Jake considered this. Maybe, if they really wanted to learn, and so began something unexpected. Dr. Chen started bringing other traumatized animals to Jake. Dogs that wouldn't eat, cats that had been abused, even a parrot that had been plucking its own feathers out from stress. And somehow, Jake knew what each one needed. Word spread in the veterinary community. Soon, doctor, Chen's small clinic was getting referrals from around the state. Animals that couldn't be helped anywhere else were brought to the boy who could hear them. Sarah quit her job at the diner when it became clear Jake's gifts could actually help support them. Not through exploitation, she was fierce about that, but through legitimate consultation fees from veterinarians and animal behaviorists. Margaret Liu managed everything, making sure Jake was protected, that he still had time to be a kid. Luna recovered fully, though she would always bear the scars. She became Jake's constant companion and eventually a certified therapy dog, visiting hospitals and nursing homes, where her story of survival gave others hope. The puppies grew strong and healthy. Brave was adopted by Tom Bradley, who said a cop needed a brave partner. Hope went to Doctor. Chen's elderly mother, who had been depressed since her husband's death, but bloomed with a puppy to care for. And Miracle, tiny Miracle who had almost died that first night, stayed with Jake and Luna. She never grew very big, some damage from the early malnutrition permanent, but what she lacked in size she made up for in spirit. Max built a bigger fence around their small yard, creating a paradise for the dogs. He'd never admitted to liking them much before, but Sarah often caught him sneaking them treats, building them toys in his workshop. 6 months after the rescue, they held a celebration at the clinic. All the surviving dogs from the warehouse were there with their new families. It was chaos, beautiful chaos, dogs and humans everywhere, sharing stories of recovery and hope. Jake stood in the middle of it all, Luna on one side, Miracle on the other, surrounded by the lives he'd saved. A reporter asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up. I want to keep helping animals, he said simply, and teaching people to listen to them. How do you listen to animals? The reporter asked. Jake thought about it. You have to be really quiet inside, not just your voice, but your thoughts too. And you have to believe they have something important to say, because they always do. Margaret Liu watched from her chair, tears in her eyes. Robert would have loved him, she said to Sarah. He would have said Jake was the future he always hoped for. But the story wasn't quite over. A year later, when Jake was 6 and starting first grade, a new challenge arrived. A horse, rescued from a racing stable, so traumatized it hadn't let anyone near it in months. The rescue organization was ready to give up, to put the animal down as irredeemably dangerous. "Please," the owner begged Dr. Chen, "we've heard about Jake. It's our last hope." Sarah was hesitant. Horses were so much bigger than dogs. If something went wrong... But Jake was already walking toward the trailer where the horse was kept, Luna limping along beside him. "His name is Storm," Jake said, though no one had told him the horse's name. "He's not mean. He's just remembering bad things over and over and can't stop." The horse was massive, black as night, his eyes wild with fear and rage. He'd injured 3 handlers, destroyed 2 stalls. The rescue owner, a woman named Patricia, looked exhausted. "We've tried everything. Sedation, food rewards, different handlers, nothing works." Jake stood at the trailer door, not opening it, just standing. Luna sat beside him, calm and steady. "Storm," Jake said softly, "I know about the whips. I know about the drugs they gave you to make you run faster. I know about the dark stall where they kept you when you lost." The horse's ears flicked toward him. "But that's not happening anymore. Those people are gone. Patricia wants to help you, but you have to let her." For an hour, Jake just talked. He told Storm about Luna, about survival, about choosing to trust again, even when every instinct screamed against it. Sarah watched, her heart in her throat, as slowly, impossibly, the horse's rigid posture began to relax. "Can I come in?" Jake asked. The horse snorted, pawing the ground, but Jake seemed to take this as permission. Before anyone could stop him, he opened the trailer door and stepped inside. "Jake, no!" Sarah lunged forward, but Max caught her arm. "Look," he said quietly. The horse that had been described as irredeemably violent was nuzzling Jake's hair, gentle as a lamb. Jake reached up, his small hand touching the horse's neck, and Storm let out a sigh that seemed to release years of tension. "He says thank you," Jake told Patricia. "He says he's been trying to tell someone about the bad things for so long, but no one understood. He's tired of being angry." Patricia was crying openly. Can you help him?" Jake looked at the horse, then at Luna, who wagged her tail. "Once." "We can try," he said, and they did. Over the following months, Jake worked with Storm, teaching Patricia and her team how to read the horse's signals, how to approach him without triggering his trauma. It was slow work, patient work, but eventually Storm learned to trust again. The story of the boy and the horse went viral, even more than Luna's rescue had. Suddenly everyone wanted to know about the child who could talk to animals. But fame brought new problems. Animal rights extremists wanted to use Jake for their causes. Scientists wanted to study him. Religious groups claimed he was either blessed or possessed, depending on their beliefs. Sarah tried to shield him, but it was impossible to hide from the world's attention. Then came the letter that changed everything. It arrived on a Tuesday, expensive paper with an official seal, the Whitmore Institute for Animal Behavior, the most prestigious veterinary research facility in the country. "We've been following Jake's remarkable work," the letter read. "We would like to offer him a full scholarship to our youth program, where gifted children learn alongside our researchers. Additionally, we're prepared to offer your family housing on our campus and a position for you, Ms. Wilson, in our administration." Sarah read it 3 times, not believing. It was a way out of poverty, a future for Jake that she could never provide on her own. But Jake, reading over her shoulder, shook his head. "We can't leave Luna and the puppies." "They can come with us," Sarah assured him, reading further. "It says accommodation for assistance animals is included." "What about Grandpa? And Dr. Chen and Margaret?" Sarah's heart ached. He was right. They'd built a family here, an unconventional one, but a family nonetheless. That evening, they held a family meeting at Dr. Chen's clinic. Everyone was there: Max, Margaret, Dr. Chen, even Tom Bradley with Brave, who'd grown into a magnificent dog. Sarah explained the offer, the opportunity it represented, the security. "But?" Margaret asked, reading Sarah's hesitation. "But we'd have to leave. Move across the country." Silence fell. Then Max spoke, gruff as always. "Seems to me," he said, "that boy's gift isn't meant to be studied in some institute. It's meant to be used, here, with the animals that need him." "But the opportunity," Sarah started. We'll make our own opportunities, Doctor, Chen interrupted. I've been thinking about expanding the clinic, creating a rehabilitation center for traumatized animals, with Jake as our specialist. I could help fund it, Margaret added. Robert left me more money than I need. He'd want it used for something like this. And I can provide security, Tom said. Make sure the crazies stay away. Sarah looked around at these people who'd become family, then at Jake, who was smiling for the first time since the letter arrived. What do you think, baby? Jake looked at Luna as if consulting her, then at each of the puppies, now full-grown dogs. I think we're already home, he said. And so they stayed. The Whitmore Institute, impressed by Jake's decision, offered to partner with Dr. Chen's clinic instead, providing funding and resources for what would become the Chen Wilson Center for Animal Rehabilitation. The center grew quickly. The small clinic expanded into the building next door, then the one after that. They hired staff, veterinarians who believed in Jake's gift, trainers who learned his methods. But at the heart of it all was still a boy who could hear what animals were saying, and the scarred German shepherd who'd taught him that broken things could heal. Jake grew too, from a small, sensitive 5-year-old into a confident child who knew his purpose in the world. He went to regular school, had friends, played soccer badly but enthusiastically. But every afternoon, he was at the center, working with animals everyone else had given up on. There were failures, of course. Animals too damaged, too far gone. Each loss hit Jake hard, and Sarah worried about the weight he carried. But Luna was always there, a steady presence reminding him that saving most was better than saving none. When Jake was 8, they faced their biggest challenge yet. A call came from a marine park. An orca, captured as a baby and kept in captivity for 20 years, was dying. Refusing food, floating listlessly, showing all the signs of giving up. We know it's not your usual case, the park director said, but we've heard about Jake. Is there any chance? Sarah wanted to say no. It was too big, too public, too controversial. But Jake was already packing his backpack. Luna says we have to try, he said simply. The marine park was a 3-hour drive. Jake sat in the back with Luna, now showing her age with gray around her muzzle and a slower gait, but still strong, still protective. The orca's tank was massive, but somehow still looked like a prison. The whale floated near the surface, barely moving. Her name was Kaya, the trainer explained, and she'd been declining for months. The activists want us to release her, the director said defensively. But she was captured so young, she doesn't know how to be wild. She'd die in the ocean. Jake said nothing, just walked to the edge of the tank. Luna lay down beside him, and they both stared at the massive creature. For a long time, nothing happened. Then Jake started humming. Not a song exactly, but a low, rhythmic sound that seemed to vibrate through the air. The orca's eye, visible just above the water, focused on him. She's so lonely, Jake said finally, tears streaming down his face. She remembers her mother, her pod. They sang together. Now she sings alone, and no one answers. The trainer looked stricken. We've tried to give her companions, other orcas, but they don't speak her language, Jake interrupted. Each pod has its own dialect. It would be like putting you in a room with people who speak a different language and expecting you to be happy because you're all human. He stood up, surprising everyone by pulling off his shoes and socks. Jake, what are you doing? Sarah asked, alarmed. She needs to know someone understands. Before anyone could stop him, he sat on the edge of the tank and put his feet in the water. It was against every rule, every safety protocol. The director started forward, but Tom Bradley, who'd insisted on coming for security, held him back. Trust the boy, he said. Jake began humming again, his feet making small splashes in rhythm. The orca moved for the first time in hours, turning slightly toward him. And then she sang. It was nothing like the cheerful squeaks and whistles people expected from dolphins and whales. It was deep, mournful, complex. A symphony of loss and loneliness that made everyone present step back in awe. Jake listened, then hummed again, trying to match her tones. Back and forth, they went, the boy and the whale, having a conversation no one else could understand. Finally, Jake pulled his feet from the water and stood up. She'll eat if you change what you're feeding her. She wants the salmon, not the herring, and she needs live fish sometimes, to hunt, to remember she's a predator, not a pet. That's all? The trainer asked. No. Jake's voice was firm. She needs her own pod. Not other orcas. Humans. People who will learn her songs, sing with her every day. She's accepted she can't go home, but she needs a family here. It seemed impossible, but the marine park tried it. They changed her diet, gave her live fish to chase, and most importantly, assembled a team of trainers who worked with Jake to learn Kaya's specific calls. Within a month, Kaya was active again. Within 6 months, she was performing not for crowds, but for the joy of interaction. The marine park transformed their entire approach, focusing on communication and companionship rather than entertainment. The story made international news. The boy who speaks whale. Suddenly, Jake wasn't just helping local animals. Requests came from around the world, but the attention came with a price. There were death threats from people who thought Jake was possessed, lawsuits from those who claimed he was a fraud, constant media scrutiny that made normal life impossible. One night, Sarah found Jake crying in his room. Luna pressed against him, Miracle curled in his lap. "I don't want to be special anymore," he sobbed. "I just want to be normal." Sarah held him tight, not knowing what to say. How could she tell him that normal wasn't an option, had never been an option from the moment he'd heard Luna crying in that carousel horse? It was Margaret who had the answer. "Being normal is overrated," she told Jake the next day. Robert was never normal. He hurt animals too, and people thought he was strange. But he saved hundreds of lives, made the world better. Did people hate him for it? Some did. But more loved him for it. And the animals. The animals knew. They had a friend in him, just like they know with you. Jake looked at Luna, who despite her advancing age still watched him with complete devotion. "Luna says I can't stop. Too many need help." "Then we'll help you help them," Sarah said. "All of us. You're not alone in this." And he wasn't. The center continued to grow. They opened satellite locations in other cities, all staffed by people Jake had trained to listen. Really listen to animals. It wasn't the same as Jake's gift, but it was close enough to make a difference. When Jake was 10, Luna's health began to fail. The vet said it was remarkable she'd lived this long given her injuries. Her organs were shutting down, her body finally giving in to years of damage. Jake spent every moment with her, sleeping on the floor beside her bed, reading to her, singing the songs he'd learned from Kaya. "She's not scared," he told Sarah one evening. "She says she's had more life in these 5 years than in all the years before. She's ready." "Are you ready?" Sarah asked, though her own heart was breaking. "No, but she says that's okay. Love means it's supposed to hurt when we say goodbye." They held on for another week. Margaret came every day with soup no one could eat. Max built a special ramp so Luna could still go outside to feel the sun. Dr. Chen managed Luna's pain, keeping her comfortable. Tom Bradley brought Brave to say goodbye to his mother. The big dog, so confident normally, whined and pressed against Luna, understanding somehow that this was the end. On her last day, Luna managed to stand one more time. She walked slowly to where her puppies, now adult dogs, were gathered. She touched each one with her nose. Brave, the protector. Hope, the gentle soul. And Miracle, tiny Miracle, who licked her mother's scarred face with infinite tenderness. Then Luna walked to Jake and collapsed in his arms. "It's okay," he whispered, though tears streamed down his face. "You can go. We'll be okay. You taught us how to be strong." Luna looked at him with those amber eyes that had seen so much horror but chosen to trust anyway. Her tail wagged once, weakly, and then she was gone. The entire city seemed to mourn with them. Luna had become a symbol of survival, of redemption. Her funeral, held at the center, was attended by hundreds. People brought flowers, toys, pictures of their own rescued animals. Jake spoke at the service, his young voice carrying across the crowd. "Luna taught me that broken doesn't mean worthless, scared doesn't mean dangerous, and hurt doesn't mean hopeless. She survived the worst things people could do, and she still chose to love. That's the bravest thing anyone can do." He paused, looking at the sky. "She says thank you. All of you who helped her, who believed in her. She says she'll be waiting for us, and not to be sad for too long, because there are other dogs who need us now." Some people smiled through their tears. Others thought it was just a grieving boy's imagination. But those who knew Jake, who'd seen what he could do, believed every word. Life went on, as it does. The center thrived. Jake grew older, his gift evolving from childhood intuition into something deeper, more sophisticated. He began teaching others, not just to work with animals, but to really understand them. Miracle became his new companion, going everywhere Luna had gone, small but fierce in her protection of Jake. She seemed to carry some of Luna's spirit, that same unbreakable will. When Jake was 12, a documentary crew followed him for a year. The resulting film, The Boy Who Listens, won awards and changed how people thought about animal consciousness. It showed Jake working with everything from traumatized pit bulls to grieving elephants, each case more remarkable than the last. But it also showed the cost, the sleepless nights when he couldn't save an animal, the weight of feeling every creature's pain, the isolation that came from having a gift no one fully understood. "Do you ever wish you couldn't hear them?" the filmmaker asked in the final interview. Jake considered the question, Miracle in his lap, surrounded by the photos of all the animals he'd helped. "Sometimes," he admitted, "when it hurts too much, when I can't help them all. But then I think about Luna. If I hadn't heard her that day, she would have died alone in that Carousel horse. Her puppies would have died. All those dogs in the warehouse would still be fighting." He looked directly at the camera. Everyone has the ability to hear animals, at least a little. They just have to choose to listen, to believe that animals have something to say, to care enough to try to understand. The documentary ended with footage from the center's 5-year anniversary celebration. Hundreds of animals and their families, all connected by a boy who had heard a dog crying in an abandoned amusement park and refused to walk away. Jake, now taller, more confident, but still with those same serious blue eyes, stood before the crowd. "People ask me what the animals say," he told them. "They say a lot of things, but mostly they say, 'Please understand me.' They say, 'I'm scared.' They say, 'I love you.' The same things we all say, just in different ways." He paused, his hand on Miracle's head. "Luna used to tell me that humans and animals aren't that different. We all want to be safe, to be loved, to belong somewhere. The only difference is that animals never forget how to love, even when they've been given every reason to hate." The crowd was silent, many wiping away tears. "So if you take anything from our story," Jake continued, "let it be this. Listen. To your pets, to the strays, to the birds outside your window. They're all telling you something, and if you listen, really listen, you might be surprised by what you hear." Years passed. Jake grew into a young man, his gift refined by experience and education. He studied veterinary medicine, animal behavior, psychology, but at his core, he remained the 5-year-old boy who'd heard a dog crying and couldn't walk away. The center became a model for others worldwide. The Chen Wilson method was taught in veterinary schools. Jake traveled, teaching, consulting, always with Miracle by his side until she too grew old and joined Luna in whatever comes after. By then, there were new dogs, new cases, new challenges. But Jake never forgot Luna, the German shepherd who'd changed everything. Her portrait hung in the center's entrance, scarred and beautiful, with a plaque that read, "Luna, 2018 to 2023. She taught us to listen." Sarah, watching her son work, often thought about that day their car broke down. Such a small thing, a mechanical failure, that had led to so much. If they'd broken down a mile earlier or later, if Max had arrived sooner, if Jake hadn't heard that whimper. But he had heard it, and he'd listened, and that had made all the difference. One day, a reporter asked the now adult Jake what he would tell his 5-year-old self, the boy standing outside that Carousel horse. Jake smiled, the expression lighting up his face in a way that reminded Sarah of the little boy he'd been. "I'd tell him he was right, that Luna was worth saving, that all of them are worth saving, and that listening, really listening, is the most important thing a person can do." "Any regrets?" the reporter asked. "Just one," Jake admitted. "I wish I could have told Luna, really told her in words she could understand, how much she meant to us, how her survival gave us purpose, how her trust taught us to be better." He paused, looking out the window where a new rescue was arriving, another dog with another story of survival against odds. But maybe she knew. Maybe that's what she was trying to tell us all along. That love doesn't need words. It just needs someone willing to listen. The story could end there, with Jake grown and successful, the center thriving, Luna's legacy secure. But life doesn't really end. It just continues. One rescue at a time, one moment of connection after another. Even now, somewhere, there's a child hearing an animal cry and choosing to listen. Somewhere, there's a creature that's been given up on, waiting for someone to understand. Somewhere, there's a connection being made that will change everything. Because that's what Luna taught them all, that in the darkest places, in the most hopeless situations, there's always the possibility of rescue. Not just for the animals, but for the humans brave enough to listen to them. Jake still runs the center, grayer now, lines around his eyes from years of smiling and crying in equal measure. He trains new listeners, young people with the gift, teaching them what Luna taught him. Animals don't lie, he tells them. They don't pretend. They feel everything purely, completely. When they trust you, it's absolute. When they love you, it's forever. We could learn a lot from them if we just stop talking long enough to listen. And in a small corner of the center, in a place of honor, sits an old carousel horse, carefully restored. Inside, where Luna once lay dying, is now a small museum. Pictures of her, of the puppies, of all the animals saved because one boy heard crying and couldn't walk away. Visitors often ask why they keep it. To remember, Jake always says. To remember that miracles hide in the strangest places. That hope can survive anything. And that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change the world. The carousel horse stands as a monument not to suffering, but to survival. Not to cruelty, but to compassion. Not to endings, but to beginnings. And sometimes, late at night when the center is quiet, Jake stands before it and remembers. A 5-year-old boy, a dying dog, 3 tiny puppies, and the moment when everything changed because someone chose to listen. Thank you, Luna, he whispers to the darkness, for everything. And somewhere, in whatever peace waits for brave dogs who've earned their rest, a scarred German shepherd's tail wags one more time. The story of Luna and Jake spread far beyond their city, beyond their country. It became a reminder that in a world full of noise, the most important sounds are often the quietest, the whimper of something hurt, the cry of something lost, the whisper of hope that refuses to die. And now, as you finish this story, perhaps you'll listen a little more carefully to the animals in your life. Perhaps you'll notice things you missed before. Perhaps you'll be the one who hears a cry others ignore. Because that's how the world changes. One rescue at a time, one connection at a moment, one person choosing to listen when it would be easier to walk away. Luna's legacy lives on in every animal saved, every connection made, every moment when someone chooses compassion over convenience. She proved that the most broken among us can become the strongest, that the most hurt can show us how to heal. And Jake, he proved that sometimes the smallest among us can do the biggest things. That age doesn't determine wisdom, that gifts come in unexpected packages, and that listening, really listening, can save lives. So the next time you see a stray, hear a cry, notice suffering, remember Luna, remember Jake, remember that you too have the power to listen, to help, to change everything for some creature counting on kindness from a stranger. Because in the end, that's what we all are to each other. Strangers who can choose to be saviors, humans who can choose to hear, people who can choose to care. The carousel horse still stands, the center still saves lives, and somewhere, right now, an animal is crying out, hoping someone, anyone, will listen. Will it be you? If this story touched your heart, if Luna's journey inspired you, if Jake's gift made you think differently about the animals in our world, please like and share this story. Comment below about your own experiences with animals, the connections you've made, the rescues you've witnessed or been part of. Tell us where you're watching from and how this story affected you. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories of hope, survival, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Together, we can spread Luna's message that every life matters, every cry deserves to be heard, and every one of us has the power to make a difference.